Sometimes, people who have crossed the line of life and death see amazing things that are difficult to describe in words, and the story that will be told in this video is a vivid confirmation of that. Amer Berro was born into a Muslim family in one of America's largest cities. From his earliest childhood, the Islamic faith was for him not just a set of rules, but rather an integral part of his daily life, something like the air he breathed. He was surrounded by traditions, prayers, historical stories about the great Muslim prophets. These were not just words, but something alive that permeated his everyday. His parents, especially his mother, were deeply religious people. They tried from childhood to instill in him a love of faith and taught him to follow all the precepts of Islam. His mother often read the Koran to him, told him stories about the righteous, and how important it is to follow the path of Allah. These moments became the foundation of his childhood, a kind of foundation that shaped his spiritual views. Amer was a very devoted Muslim. He carefully observed all religious rituals and traditions. But even in his childish heart, there was always room for questions. He couldn't help but wonder about the world around him. Why do bad things happen? What is the true purpose of man? These questions seemed to haunt him constantly, and even the simplest explanations could not fully satisfy his inquisitive mind. And yet, since childhood, he was often tormented by strange night visions. They seemed confusing and incomprehensible to him, and he often woke up in a cold sweat, unable to figure out what it was. It was as if something in the depths of his soul was looking for a way out. One day, when he was 12 years old, his life changed dramatically. That night, he wanted to see the night sky. He persuaded his brother to switch places with him in order to sleep by the window. Amer lay down and fell asleep pretty quickly, but in the middle of the night, he was woken up by a ringing voice that spoke his name. He opened his eyes and saw Jesus Christ in front of him. It was so incredible that at first the boy couldn't even believe his eyes. He saw Jesus Christ and at the same time felt that he was communicating with him telepathically, sharing a message of love and hope. This knowledge was so strong that it left an indelible mark on the boy's soul, like a seal. Amer couldn't tell anyone about it. He was afraid that he would be considered crazy or that he would not be understood. This experience became his personal secret, a shock that he carried for a long time, not knowing what to do with it, how to make sense of it. This unusual experience seems to have changed his perception of the world and his spiritual path forever. As time passed, the memories of that vision with Jesus began to become covered with dust, fading from memory. But no matter how hard he tried to forget it all, some incomprehensible strange events continued to haunt him. This was especially noticeable during prayer. At such moments, he felt lonely, disconnected from everything. It's like there's some other story inside that no one understands. He sincerely tried to follow all the traditions and rituals of his faith, tried to be a good Muslim, but there were often moments when deep inside there were questions that would not give rest. This went on for quite a long time, until one day a fateful incident happened, which finally divided his life into before and after. It happened on February 1st, 2020. Amer suffered a heart attack in his sleep, which turned into a near-death experience. That was the day that really became a turning point in his life. Later, he said that he felt as if he had fallen into a dark tunnel from which there was no exit, was rapidly falling into some kind of abyss, and the fear of going to hell simply overwhelmed him, and the feeling of hopelessness became simply unbearable. There was some terrible chaos in his head, complete confusion. But at the most critical moment, when it seemed to him that everything was over, a white light suddenly shone in front of him. He realized that this was his guardian angel. The angel's voice was somehow special. There was both fear and extraordinary beauty in it. But the most important thing is the feeling of deep love and care that just filled everything around. The angel called Amer to turn to Jesus for help and salvation. This was the beginning of a profound change in his mind. Amer was devoted to Islam all his life, followed all the rules and rituals. And then, at such a critical moment, under the pressure of this terrible hopelessness, it suddenly burst out of him. "Please, Jesus, come into my heart and save me." And at the same moment, the world around him seemed to light up with some kind of bright light. Amer returned to his body and seemed to wake up from a nightmare. He realized with trepidation that something completely unusual had just happened, which could not be explained by any rational arguments. This encounter just shook him to the core, and the man could not deny its reality. After this experience, the real search work began. Amer decided to find answers to all his questions that had accumulated over his entire life. Amer began to study the Bible in depth. This changed the whole rhythm of his prayer. It became more thoughtful, more personal. He began to record his thoughts and discoveries on paper. And with each new reading, his doubts about Islam grew, especially regarding the teachings of the crucifixion of Jesus. The vision of Christ's sacrifice seemed transformed, and the realization of the depth of God's love, which manifested itself in the ability to forgive and love even enemies, became something obvious. One day, while reading the Bible, he found a verse from the Gospel of John. "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life." He says that this verse was a real revelation, filled his heart with light and hope, and everything seemed to fall into place. Amer's spiritual journey continued after everything that had happened to him, and it was as if he began to see the world anew, with completely different eyes. His life was filled with a new meaning, a new purpose. He felt that he simply had to share his experience with other people. He really hoped that his story would be able to inspire at least someone to search for the truth and the very love that he himself had finally found. Amer often said that during prayer, his heart seemed to be filled with light, encouraging him to share it with others. He began to notice that his prayers were bearing fruit. Some changes were taking place in his life, and even the world around him seemed to be changing. It all seemed to emphasize that God's love can really overcome any obstacles and bring hope, even in the most difficult moments. One night, Amer had a dream that became something of an omen for him. In the dream, the doors to some fantastic heavenly place opened in front of the guy, where there was a magnificent building. Amer found himself in a room where Jesus was reading Bible stories to children. And when he saw Jesus, he was just overwhelmed with joy, and he recognized him immediately, even though he had never seen him in person before. Overwhelmed with love and gratitude, Amer hugged Jesus tightly. A heavenly landscape of incredible beauty opened outside the window, surprising and filling everything with warmth and light. After a while, Jesus said that it was time to part ways, and Amer Berro needed to return. Amer begged him to stay with him, but Jesus reassuringly said that they would definitely meet again in the future. These words brought peace and deep peace of mind to Amer. After this dream, Amer began to have other dreams, and in each of them, he felt some important messages, as if someone was discovering new facets of understanding. In one of his dreams, he saw the number 436. Then he specifically studied what it meant and found out that it was the number of an angel, symbolizing that his prayers had been answered. This discovery only strengthened his faith, and he realized that he was indeed following some kind of divine path. They seemed to make it clear to him that his spiritual path was just beginning, that there were still many discoveries and transformations ahead that would help him not only understand himself, but also share love and light with other people. Every day, Amer's story became more significant. He continued to share his unique experiences with others, telling them about the sincere love and peace he had found in his life. For him, it was not just a change of faith, it became a whole path to deep self-knowledge and the search for the true meaning of life, which led to the realization of his destiny. Amer understood that this was just the beginning of the journey, and he tried his best to inspire others to follow him. He willingly shared his knowledge of the boundless love of Christ and emphasized the importance of trusting God at every moment of life. It was as if he wanted everyone to feel the same joy and peace that he had finally found. It's up to you, my dear viewers and subscribers of the channel, to believe this story or not. Finally, I want to say that my channel adheres to a neutral point of view, without deviating into any doctrine or religion. I just found this amazing story and decided to share it with you. If you would like to see more of these stories on my channel, please like this video. That's how I know you like this video. Thank you so much for watching. Be happy.